Hey guys, just a quick note before we begin that the show may contain spoilers and adult language, but that's just because we know how to have a good time. Stick around, you'll be glad you did.
You are here for me to enlighten you.
You ever act like this again, you're barred for life.
It's just violent bass.
It's kind of embarrassing.
If you know your lines, then you can forget them.
Oh, I get it. It's very clever.
Hello, peoples, and welcome back to another episode of Esoterica Cinema, the podcast where we take films from the cinematic multiverse and discuss the hell out of them. I am your host for the day, Ryan Siebold, and with me, as always, is a man who just got out of the studio recording his first album of sea shanties, Jason Peters!
Arr, what's up, me matey Ryan? How goes it?
Yes, he's coming in character. I love it. How's it going, man? How's it going?
Oh, it's going well. It's going well.
Oh my God, sorry about that. I was just super in character there for a minute. Yeah, it's actually going well. Obviously, you got a little taste of my sea shanty pirate. I call him Gene, actually.
Okay. So you've been in the studio. How's it been going in the studio, man? I know you're coming in a little late on the sea shanty trend, but I think you're doing it right. You got a nice producer you're working with. I heard you're recording some tracks with a full band, but yeah, sea shanties. Do you have any insight for our listeners? Any of the title names of your tracks or anything, or any details you can give us before the album comes out?
I think so. Yeah. So to answer your first question, it's going well. I didn't actually have a sea shanty band of my own. This is something that my agent's friend of a friend knew a guy, got us in touch. I have never actually sang before, and I was very hesitant about that. Turns out that's exactly what they want. Because, see, what they're trying to do is these days they're trying to bring an element of realism to music.
Yeah.
So the idea is like, okay, back in the day, it was a bunch of, gruff pirates on these ships. They didn't know how to sing. They didn't take vocal training. They didn't know to, work from the diaphragm and such, which, by the way, I'm still horrible at working on that. But, so in keeping with the authenticity, they wanted to actually find non-professional singers. And let me tell you, no one can sing worse than old Jason over here. So I was a prime candidate, and it's been going well.
Good.
Yeah, as far as some of the names, it's kind of interesting. So they're kind of trying to do, I guess it's like, from what I can tell, it's got a little bit of a 60s Motown vibe. So like one of the songs is called like Shell Me Once, Shell Me Twice. Okay. And it's got kind of like a doo-wop vibe to it.
Yeah.
Right? And then all of a sudden they would kind of switch it on us and give us something with a little bit more of like a 2000s flavor.
Yeah.
And that one would be called like Keep Your Hands Off My Booty.
Okay.
And that's a real,
that's
like a real
banger. Yeah, that sounds like a banger.
Real dance track. Yeah, it gets everybody rowing really, really hard on the ship there. And let's see if there's another one I can think of. Oh yeah, we're actually doing a cover of the Great Styx song "Come Sail Away," and we've got like this big, huge, like 36 person shanty, everyone singing "Come Sail Away, Come Sail Away, Come Sail Away" with me. It's fantastic, and I can't wait for you all to hear it.
Just thinking about that. Yeah, no pun necessary. Yeah. That's just built in.
Yeah, it is right there. Sometimes,
how is that not been done?
Sometimes you got to take the low hanging fruit, right? And say it's there. Why not?
Especially on this show.
Fuck that.
Especially on this show, we are the kings of low hanging fruit, my friend.
So I'm just rolling that same mentality right into the old recording booth, and it's going fantastic.
Dude, we're glad to have you, man. Yeah.
While you have me, because I'm telling you, this thing is going to blow up. Next season, you're going to have to find a new co-host, buddy, because I'm sorry, I'm making that sweet, sweet sea shanty money. And me and my 35 other amigos will be traveling the world, getting what I imagine are big-breasted women who work in canteens and also give us, like, stick baths or something. I don't know. It's a whole culture that I'm just getting into. There's a lot to learn.
Yeah, sounds like it. I'll try not to get too salty about it.
Hey, I'm stealing that one. Guys are going to love it. Hey, Manuel, remind me to tell you when we're done. I've got a good one. That's Manuel. He's my boy.
Well, while we have you, we do have a movie to talk about. In the meantime, I'll try not to take you for granted because every moment counts, it sounds like, before your sea shanty career takes off. But yeah, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what we got for them today?
All right. Should I, so in normal voice or sea shanty voice?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you don't mind giving a little bit of the goods away, yeah, definitely bring some sea shanty love.
I mean, you just heard it. It's what I did at the top. It's just a little R kind of, thing. So it's
Let's
just
do
a
it.
little gravelly from the back of the throat. Here we go.
They eat so fast you don't have time to scream. A massive ball of furry creatures from another world eat their way through a small Midwestern town, followed by intergalactic bounty hunters, opposed only by militant townspeople. Arr, that's all I have because it's a short description. Arr.
Actually, that description lent itself really well to that character voice. It sounds like your warning of things to come. Yes, this is.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the old guy on the rocking chair, sitting next to the "Welcome to Nebraska" sign or wherever the hell it is.
You might want to turn back around there, Sonny.
Like the drunken dude from Dagon in season 1 or whatever. That's,
yeah, exactly.
Telling me of horrors most foul. Yes, that's right. Today's film is Critters from 1986, bringing us the power of the night. Oh, man, I really enjoyed this, Jason, but I can't wait to hear what you think about this movie.
Well, I suppose, Ryan, I'll let you know right after we play this brief trailer.
Of all the planets in the galaxy, they chose ours. They hide in small places.
This phone is dead.
What?
They light the dark.
Jay, any luck?
Just a minute.
There's nothing cute about them. They've come a long way, and they're hungry. Critters. They bite.
I actually really enjoyed this movie. I very much enjoyed it.
I was hoping
it's
you would.
Obviously not a 5-star. You're not going to ascribe a masterpiece. I'm sure is not one of your adjectives like it was on the last film, but it's a very, very fun movie. How about you? High level, what'd you think?
Oh, no, I love this. Yeah. Because, okay, so a couple things that we're going to get into. My biggest complaint, more critters. I'm sure the sequels remedy that. They're working on a budget. Halfway through the movie, I'm still seeing very few critters. And so I wish there was a little more of the stuff. But even in those lull moments with the family and all the setup and everything that gets us to those points, they were fun too. And the music was good and all the acting was really fun. It had a bit of a Stranger Things vibe. I know we're kind of in that era now where everything gets compared to Stranger Things when they're the ones that should be getting compared to critters. But yeah, my first take, obviously, when you put this on, 20 seconds into the film, it's like, oh, this is not Phantom Thread. The contrast to last week's film to this week's, from last week's film to this week's film is another level. But like you said, this is not the PTA masterpiece that we just experienced. But man, was it a fun palate cleanser, and just in time for Halloween.
100%. Yeah, excellent timing. So I'll tell you what, Ryan, we'll go ahead and we'll jump right in here. Just need to know where we should start.
At the beginning.
Yes, at the beginning.
Feels so good.
By the way, wonderful beginning. So, funny thing, the Blu-ray menu, before even the movie starts, the Blu-ray menu is already one of the most 80s things that I've ever seen in my life because it's got that theme song, which, by the way, the movie really has two theme songs. It's got the Power of the Night that you mentioned, and then it's got
Power of the Night,
the synthy sort of track that kicks in at the end and might play at the beginning, right? So, all of that plays right in the menu. I was super stoked. And sure enough, it delivers right off the bat when we are introduced to an asteroid that is floating through space. And superimposed, we read that this is a prison asteroid, Sector 17.
Sure.
A maximum security prison, complete with cha-chink jail sound. So perfect. So it was like,
fuck it, why not?
I didn't realize
Prison asteroid.
this movie opened on a prison asteroid. Like, I kind of thought it was. I kind of thought it was going to be more horror, but it definitely starts off with the sci-fi vibe, and then with the bounty hunters.
Yes.
There's more sci-fi here than I expected, and I was totally okay with that.
Yes, sci-fi and comedy, way more than
Yeah.
horror, and then it kind of leans into some of the horror twinges later in the film.
Absolutely. Now we see a spaceship, and the spaceship is delivering what he refers to as Krite prisoners, which we can kind of figure based on the fact that it's so close to critters is probably our titular characters. And he mentions that they ate so much that they had to kill 2 of them just to make the food last, because there's supposed to be 10 and he's only bringing back 8. So, a little bit of foreshadowing going on here. Now, we go immediately inside the prison and introduced to the jail warden, who is this like crazy floating worm alien thing. I did not expect that at all. And all of a sudden there's an explosion and the Krites have stolen a ship and they're in the middle of escaping, at which point Mr. Crazy Worm Alien Dude is like, hey, you know what we need to do here? We need to hire 2 bounty hunters with glowing green faceless orb heads and send them on a mission to get these crates. Ryan, did you have any idea the setup to this film was as insane as it is?
Not at all. No. So this film, we talk about this a lot without going on too much of a tangent here, but this is one of those box cover films that we reference a lot, where I had not seen this movie before. I've seen the cover of this film a million times. This film spawned more sequels than I care to count. Critters 1, 2, 3, 4, and a bunch of subtitles. It's kind of like its own little Hellraiser thing where it's got all these spinoffs. And
and they just got this series on Shudder as well. They turned it into like a spinoff series now.
Oh,
too.
wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I will also add that this movie in the 80s kind of blended in with a bunch of like-minded movies or similar movies in style, like Chud and Ghoulies and stuff like that. So I kind of got them, a lot of those things, even like Puppet Master and stuff, a lot of the styles of filmmaking in that regard kind of cross the streams a bit. So I had no idea what to expect from this film, all that to say. So, but I was pleasantly surprised, and I really love this movie for what it is.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, anytime we kick off in space, like right away, you got my attention. The 14-year-old boy in me just, loves that. Like,
well, and the alien, like you're talking about, like it looked like something right out of The Fifth Element, but like a Kirkland brand kind, or like the Party City version of that, like the costume was.
For me, it was like Flash Gordon. It was a little bit of like the older, campier, not quite the budget of like a Fifth Element. But yeah, either way, whatever you want to do, something super campy and sci-fi-y. So that was super cool. And then, we get a brief credit sequence kind of going through space. From there, we touch down on an idyllic farm and we get these nice wide shots and we see that there's a very traditional, happy looking family. Everyone looks healthy. We're introduced to the mother, Helen, who's cooking bacon. She's played by Dee Wallace, who, if you recognize her, it's because she was the mom from E.T. I'm sure she had a couple other things there, but we all know her as the mom from E.T. We're also introduced to the beautiful high school-aged daughter, April, played by a girl named Nadine Vandervelde. Gooberish-looking redhead son. He's actually got a thermometer in his mouth and he's trying to fake sick. Nice little character touch there. His name's Brad, played by Scott Grimes. And then lastly, we've got Dad, hard at work in the downstairs basement. His name is Jay, played by a gentleman named Billy Greenbush. All of them then proceed to join around the breakfast table and have one of those infamous 80s breakfasts where everybody takes half a bite of food and then runs off. I always think that's hilarious.
Yeah.
But
I love that.
That was always the thing. Mom spends 7 minutes cooking breakfast. Everyone takes one bite. It's okay, I'll take a piece of toast with me. Bye. Right. Now, it is kind of funny because it works well. What this does initially, and it's a theme that's going to keep up over the course of the movie, is it establishes the theme of family, right? They're going to have to band together many times over the course of this film, the same way that they sort of band together here around the breakfast table. And it's funny, Ryan, that you actually mentioned some of those other sort of creature features in that like mid 80s, early 80s. That was actually kickstarted very much by Gremlins. So like they had been trying to get Critters, the writer and director that is respectively, done for a little while. And it wasn't until Gremlins took off and become a hit that then the studio was looking for copycats that they could greenlight. And as a matter of fact, it was funny because so back up real quick. There's two main gentlemen that are responsible for the creation of this film, okay? And that's going to be the screenwriter Dominic Muir, who would later go by Brian Muir. Dominic was his middle name. And then the director, Stephen Herrick. Now, both of them kind of ended up bringing the same amount to the table when all was said and done. However, the idea was actually initiated by Dominic when he was a 19-year-old kid. And he was born out in Nebraska, and he wanted to come out to Hollywood, but he knew that he needed to have something to present people. So at 19, he actually wrote this film, the first draft, Critters. And came out. Yeah. And then, he couldn't really sell it. And the original draft that he had was actually much darker, too. So he actually wanted this to be like a hard R. And he still had the comedy, but all of the deaths were a lot more gruesome than they ended up being in the final version. And it was actually him connecting with this guy, Stephen Herrick, who all of them were working as editors for Roger Corman. And that's how they all got connected.
Awesome.
And then Roger Corman read his script, committed to it, and said he would do it. But then this other guy named Robert Shea, who ended up being the current producer, he found out that Corman was going to do it. And because of the success of Gremlins, he outbid him. And so they got into a little bidding war. And of course, because Roger Corman, we know, is very cheap when it comes to the amount of money he's going to dedicate, Shea was able to secure the project by getting him more money. So pretty interesting how that came together.
And Robert Shea is Bob Shea, the originator of the founder of New Line Cinema. And this is all pre-Freddy Krueger New Line Cinema, if I'm not mistaken, when they were making this.
Yes.
It even had the old New Line Cinema logo, which I loved, the deep red New Line Cinema that came on screen, the old movie cinema logo. It's fantastic.
Yeah, when they were like more schlocky, it has that like VHS quality to it.
It looked like it was on an Atari game or something. Like it wasn't even 8-bit. We're talking like 1-bit graphics.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I don't know if you saw this too about how, so basically Dominic brought this script and it was really rough, and Steven came in and he polished it off, and the two of them, after a certain point, kind of became partners in this Critters project, with both of them bringing equal work and equal contributions to the table. But when it came time to actually direct the film, one of them had to do it, and both of them wanted to do it. So they can't really 100% verify. No one will say so. But the legend says that between the two of them, Dominic Muir and Stephen Herrick, they actually ended up flipping a coin to see who would direct, and then the other person would just take the written by credit. It ended up being very much in Stephen Herrick's favor because they ended up getting co-writing credits due to union rules, and he was still able to direct it. And he actually would immediately go from this to do stuff like The Mighty Ducks and Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead.
I saw that.
Aren't great films, but you can certainly carve a career off that sweet, sweet Disney money like that.
Yeah.
And likewise, Dominic Muir ended up writing Evil Bong 3 many years later.
Oh, no. Oh, sorry, Dominic, buddy. I did see Stephen Herrick also went on to go make the award-winning Mr. Holland's Opus. And his follow-up film to this is the legendary Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which very much fits into this genre of filmmaking of Critters. I loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so he's, just very low-key, cool dude. And it ended up being, like I said, very much in his favor. There was also an unfortunate situation that occurred where the writer, Dominic, ended up getting cancer early on in his life when he first came out. And he actually beat it, and then it relapsed later when he was in his 40s, because basically the treatment for the first cancer caused him a second cancer in his lungs. And it's just dude, this guy cannot catch a break between
I saw that.
losing the coin flip and all this stuff that happened to him. But he actually, for what it's worth, he did maintain a really positive outlook for the most part. He seemed like a genuinely happy guy, and he seemed to be very well respected and loved by his peers. So, even though he left early, it does seem like, he had a decent run of it while he's here. And again, his legacy is such that people really respect him and remember him to this day. So there are definitely worse ways to go out. And, at least he can be remembered for this thing that so many people love.
Sure. Yeah, he gave us this, and I'm glad that he did. I really enjoyed this.
Absolutely. And then now when we get back to the film, we've got the intro to the cop. Somehow they got Harv, Mr. M. Emmett Walsh, who, if you don't know him by name, you'll recognize him in a heartbeat. And that's kind of one of the things that surprised me the most, Ryan, is the level of talent that they were able to get, in terms of the acting. We've got this secretary who's Lynn Shay, which obviously she's Bob Shay's daughter, accomplished actress in her own right, but there was obviously a connection there where they were able to secure her. Emmett Walsh really wasn't in much of the movie, so I think they were able to just sort of like use his name. I'm sure they shot all his scenes in like 1 or 2 days max, probably. And then we've also got the town drunk Charlie. This is Don Keith Opper, who's the brother of one of the producers. So we've already got the daughter of one producer and the brother of another in this film. Everyone's kind of helping out, right? Doing what they can, doing favors.
Yep.
And he says that he's receiving transmissions from space on his own fillings and that Martians are coming in. And he like opens his mouth for Harv and obviously just reeks of alcohol, right? And it's like, all right, Rummy, get the hell out of here, right? Sends him on his way after sleeping it off. And we get one of several just amazing wipes, by the way. I love the 80s and how they just leaned into the wipes on these like genre films. It's wonderful. It makes it feel so silly and comic booky. And then we get these bounty hunters. They're watching a video on Earth history when a music video of this rocker, Johnny Steele, comes on. He's played by a guy, Terrence Mann, and it's his hit Power of the Night that will extend throughout the majority of this film. And Ryan, I wanted to see what you thought about this because we do get the first of actually some pretty cool practical effects.
Right.
And that's when the bounty hunter changes his face to reflect the rocker.
I have
Johnny
it in my
Steele.
notes.
What did you think about the level of the effects? Did it work for you, or was it a little too low budget? Or
No, it absolutely worked. This movie was what it was, and it leaned into it. It knew the deal. Look, these studios, you're absolutely right. They wanted the next Gremlins, right? And so, but it's like, we go find me the guy that can make the next Gremlins. But here's the catch. I got $500,000 and that's it. So this is what we're working with. And, there are some things that really excelled, some things it didn't, but it all felt like it existed in the same world. Like it all just resonated well with me. And it leaned into, like you said, the editing style and the acting style. You're able to have in a world where you have face melting like this with these aliens conforming shapes. It also lends itself to some of the acting styles like the town drunk that you just described, and his over the top goofus behaviors and stuff like that. So everything is just kind of tuned up or tuned down a certain way, but it all felt like it gelled really well with me. I loved the face effects you're talking about. These aliens are bounty hunters going to hunt the escaped convicts, the Creets, who have landed on Earth, and they have to fit in. So they're trying to study and figure out how to fit in. And they've decided, one of them has decided he's going to go fit in as this rock star that sings this power ballad, Power of the Night. And that was, I believe, performed by the actor, right? Terrence Mann playing Johnny Steele. Is that correct?
It absolutely was. I'll even take it one step further. It was actually written by Terrence Mann as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think he was a Broadway guy. They found him on Cats or something, right? On Broadway, and brought him in, and he's like, I got you, fam. And he just took over the role of everything, and I loved it. He did a great job.
It was funny because he actually had to lobby for it. So, they never really considered. I also feel like he left money on the table. He was probably just too young and naive, but he really, really wanted to show them that like he could write a song. And so he's like, hey, can I take a stab at it? And they're like, yeah, sure. You want to save us some money? No problem. And then he just went in and took about 20, 30 minutes coming up with this little keyboard part. And then they had it and they were like, cool. And they recorded it and they got some free music out of it. And he got to show his songwriting chops. So I guess everyone wins, but I feel like Terrence Mann left money on the table.
Well, I can tell you I won personally because I love that, the whole thing. He had like 1980s Richard Marx hair, which if
Yeah.
Listeners, if you have not seen Richard Marx in the 80s, please Google that right away. That's a fantastic visual. His hair is bigger than he is. I think he stands all of about 5'4". His hair is probably 5'3" on its own. So, yeah, it's something. The 80s are quite the decade. But anyway, Jason, carry on.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's funny because so the way that the scene unfolds is the face sort of melts away and then it brings itself back. And that was actually done that way because of a limitation in technology at the time. So really, the director just wanted a simple morph, just wanted it to go from nothing straight into the person's face, even if it looked a little cheesy. Cable television shows do that for pennies on the dollar these days, right? But at the time, computers weren't as advanced as they were, and nobody just had like a fail-safe way of doing that effectively. So they kind of had to break it down into two stages, one where it melts away and then another where it comes back.
For the Light and Magic fans in the audience, we know that ILM created the morphing effect for Willow. And so that happened just a few years after this. So we are on the cusp of morphing being able to be done digitally, but yeah, they had to do this practically. So you're absolutely right that they're just a few years away from being able to do this.
That's crazy. I didn't look it up, and I was trying to think, and the best I could do was thinking that it was probably Terminator 2, but it sounds like it was earlier than that, obviously.
Yeah, Willow created the
cool.
the morphing effect where they could turn one thing into another seamlessly, and the computer would fill in the gaps. So you film one thing, and then you film another thing, and then it's like, okay, I'll turn this thing into that thing. And so
yeah,
that was all done for Ron Howard.
Did not know that. So the other thing I want to talk to you about is the music in this film real quick, because I was very impressed by the music. I was like, whoever this guy is that's doing this, I feel like he's giving it his all. And, sure enough, go ahead and look it up. And it's this guy, David Newman, part of a very esteemed family of Newmans that you might be familiar with, including Randy and Thomas and a whole host of others. It actually turns out that collectively, the Newman family is the most Academy Award nominated family in history.
It's incredible.
All of them. Yeah.
Wow.
And so this ended up being one of I believe it's the youngest of the brothers, David. If not, he was certainly the least successful at the time because he actually got his start doing a lot of B movies, which led into Critters. But from there, he really took off. So he ended up doing a lot of the scores for the director, Stephen Herrick, including the Bill and Ted movies that you mentioned and Mighty Ducks. He also scored The Sandlot and Tommy Boy.
Oh,
so
sweet.
This guy scored our childhood, bro.
Absolutely.
He scored a lot of the films that we grew up on, which is pretty interesting to look at that. And it also, and the thing about getting him or someone like him, where that's their style, is it really does help enforce that family vibe that they're really trying to get across, right? Keep things PG-13, keep it upbeat, make it be about the bonding together. That way it's, and I'm sure that it goes a long way towards helping with the MPAA as well.
Thomas Newman is the other brother, right? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, that sounds correct. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. He did things like everything from Road to Perdition to 1917 and a bunch of Disney stuff too, like WALL-E and Finding Nemo and all that. So
yeah, these guys are all super studs. Yeah. So, also this guy, the David, also just personally, his first animated film. I don't know if you grew up on this one, Ryan, a little movie called The Brave Little Toaster.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh man, dude, I love that film. So that's like a very, very nostalgic
David
film for
did that?
me, right? And yeah, the guy who scored Critters scored Brave Little Toaster.
Awesome. That's
so like
perfect.
I said, this guy scored our childhood pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean collectively between all the Newmans, definitely. You might call me Newman's own. Absolutely.
That joke died on the vine, Ryan. Why does anyone?
Oh, they cannot be winners. Carry on.
So anyways, we've got Brad and Charlie. They're playing fireworks and then being rambunctious little scamps as young kids and drunks do. They end up slingshotting the sister. Brad gets blamed, doesn't deflect to Charlie, ends up getting sent to his room where we meet Chewie the cat. Hey, Chewie, who they will go back for more than once. And this is also where we're introduced to April's boyfriend, Steve. Can't be more than 20-year-old Billy Zane.
Billy
which was
Zane.
Crazy to see.
Yep, with a rat tail mullet.
Which, by the way, so this franchise, I don't know if you saw that. I don't know how this franchise gets the acting talent because I forget if there's anybody in Critters 2. Critters 3 stars Leo DiCaprio and the 4th stars Angela Bassett. And it's like, What the hell is going on?
This franchise has launched so many fucking careers. It's crazy.
Yeah, that was super nuts to see. And, the other thing is, appropriately, because it's a very young and handsome Billy Zane, right? April is thirsty for some Billy. So despite his protestations, they're going to leave. She's going to drag him away from the dinner table right in front of Dad, take him to the barn backyard. And, he's a little nervous, but why not, right? It's an attractive girl, and we got this whole place to ourselves. Right about then, a saucer flies overhead, of which the drunk, the dad, and the son all witness. And this is, of course, the Kreitz spaceship. It crashes. We've got the dad and son investigating that, and they soon find a mangled deer. So don't end up finding the Kreitz, whatever you want to call them. But we do see the younger policeman who's on duty. I forget his name exactly, but he goes to investigate the crash. And this is the first death of the film that we get, but it's an off-screen death. And basically he goes to investigate under the car, and they end up making their little noises, grab him, drag him under, and eat him, we assume. Now, this is really where the mayhem kicks off. It's, like I said, the first death. It's still off screen, but we're going to start to get introduced to the critters. So the next scene, by the way, there is a wonderful hallmark of every low-budget 80s horror film, and that, especially ones that feature small creatures, right? And this is the low-to-the-ground POV shot of the creature running around. And Ryan, let me tell you, man, I can see that shot 1,000 times and it'll still work for me every goddamn time. I love it so much, whether it's Puppet Master, Child's Play, the Stephen King one, Cat's Eye or whatever, with the troll does it. It was just this very strong hallmark, but I'll be damned if it doesn't work every single time.
Dude, I feel like we even got it in Dead Alive from the little baby's point of view as it was walking around. I swear to God, there was some of that in there as well.
With when it's playing around the playground or something, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, totally. I do remember that. Absolutely. And we've also got the, sort of hallmark of the cat running away from the little creatures that we don't see yet. And then we're introduced to them through their glowing red eyes, which were actually very cool. We'll actually touch on that a little bit later too. Now, the bounty hunters land. One of them still refuses to change. So we've got the one looking like a handsome rocker and the other who just looks like I said, like a green glow lamp or some shit. I don't know. It was a very weird thing, but it worked.
He kept its original face. Yeah, he hadn't changed faces yet.
Yeah, so, and then back at the farm, we've got the power going out for the family. Dad checks it out, phone's dead, so he goes to the basement to investigate. This is where we get our first introduction to the critters. He notices that the wires are chewed, notices a little fur ball off with all the tools and everything, and then he goes to check it out, and it attacks him. Jumps out, bites him on the shoulder, and then we also see that in addition to having some gnarly teeth, which, let's be honest, we saw from the box art, but I didn't realize, Ryan, that they had some hedgehog shooting their quill ability that they use on everyone that seems to sort of knock them out or something like that. And so they like a little hedgehog, it blasts up and they shoot their little quill.
Yeah, they're like mutant porcupines or something. That. Yeah, with multiple rows of sharks and porcupines mixed together. So something worth mentioning. I'm going to pause you right here because we're definitely chunking through this thing, and that's actually precisely what I want to talk about. Is that we're 20-30 minutes into the show here, and we're about 30-40 minutes into the film, and this film is only an hour and 26 minutes, so it takes till about halfway through ish. Give or take a few, that you actually are introduced to the critters, you see any violence happening, and you start to get the subject matter that, let's be honest, what you paid to see. So I'll ask you, Jason, real quick. Let's take just a brief moment. Is that something that bothered you, or do you feel like it abbreviated any of the pacing? Were you kind of did you ever check the time and where are these critters at? Because I did.
Honestly, no, I didn't. I think so. The sci-fi element kind of got me through the first part. And then, there's a lot of little 80s hallmarks and such. And, it's doing the family thing. And to be honest, I always really appreciate the sort of family drama element of some of those 80s horror films. I love Poltergeist. Sure. It's one of my all-time favorite films.
Right.
I think a show like The Simpsons does that very well, where it sort of matches the cynicism with the heart. And I think that's one cool thing about this film is that it does sort of have that heart at the center of everything with regards to the family. And so I think that it's playing to that very well. I think it gives you just enough of, first of all, if you think about it, we've got a lot of characters. And I feel like that's part of why it's able to push through those early scenes as well, is because we've got 4 members of the family. We've got the drunk. The drunk has a relationship with the family. We've got the cop, Harv. We've got the secretary. We are introduced then to the boyfriend. So it keeps things chugging along, I think, through those early stages by sort of introducing new people for you to get to know. And then by the time it's done that, before you really have a chance to realize that they might be superficial characters or anything, or realize what's going on, then the critters start to come. And so I feel like it does a really good job of balancing that. And also, the critter effects to me were great. I mean, even today in 2022, I think they're awesome. So I'm sure that in 1986, they were pretty damn fantastic. And so I understand low budget filmmaking. I understand that, if we're going to spend, because they actually spent $10,000 on each of these little puppets.
Wow.
The fully articulated ones and everything. So, I understand that they have to kind of stretch things out a little bit up front, to backload things with regards to the action and the creature effects. You see the same thing with television, right? The infamous bottle episodes where, it's just one episode of everyone talking because in the next one, they're all going to go to Paris together, right? And that costs a lot of money because we're doing it on location.
Game of Thrones was notorious for that. They would always have like a throwaway episode like towards the beginning of the season and one towards the end of the season. Because it's like, dude, we can't have dragons in every fucking episode. These things cost millions of dollars.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and there's a lot of grindhousey type of films and low budget filmmaking that, to be honest, I'm kind of not here for. I really like a lot of the low budget sensibilities, but some of these movies, they're so no budget that nothing happens in them, right?
Right.
So you're sitting there watching it for 20, 30 minutes and people are just kind of talking about stuff, whatever, and you don't really feel like it's building towards anything. I thought that unlike those films, this film did a good job because I felt like it was building.
You're going places, you're seeing things, you're on a spaceship, you're shooting TVs, the alien mercenaries are coming down and they're interacting with things and changing shapes. And I'll also add to everything you're saying and say that the cinematography was sneaky decent on this one. I did not expect good cinematography.
You never do on a low budget horror film, right?
Yeah, it was all really nice warm tones and the farm and low angle shots through the wheat and all this stuff, with the farmland in the background. It just dolly shots and a
lot of camera movement.
Lot of colored gels. That was one thing I noticed. I thought you'd really appreciate the blue tones in the basement and all of the hyper-realism for the lighting. This guy, Tim Surstadt, I guess you say his name, who shot this, went on to go shoot things like Little Miss Sunshine and The Wedding Singer and a bunch of other stuff. So, he had a nice long career after this as well. But I agree with everything you're saying. I said at the top of the show that though it took a while to get me to some critters, I did love everything they were showing me in the meantime. But at the same, I was kind of torn on this whole thing because I also I'm here for the critters. So I kind of, so then that makes me unwind and go back to think about Gremlins, which of course is the granddaddy of them all when it comes to something like this. And now again, Gremlins probably had, at least 10 times the budget, but I think the budget on this was $3 million. So if you told me they spent $30 million on Gremlins, I wouldn't bat an eye at that. But I feel like Gremlins just felt like a little more fleshed out. Like it just felt like a little more seamless. This was a tale of two halves for me. So you had the family half up front and the critters stuff on the back. It was sci-fi and horror. And I just felt like it, or even Dead Alive by Peter Jackson. I felt like that had a good balance. It opens right up with the Sumatran rat monkey or whatever the hell it was. And then you kind of have that as a backstory going along in the background. You kind of follow that along so that when it does come and the shit hits the fan on the back half, which is where he spent all his money, or the back even 10% of the film, there was enough breadcrumbs there that kind of got you there. I think I just would have liked to have seen a little more breadcrumbing going on in regards to the critters. Show me more of the red eye stuff. That was cool. Give me a little foreshadowing, to what's for what's to come. So I have this sense of dread instead of just everybody. I feel like everybody was just talking about the critters, like, yeah, the crits and the creets or whatever. It's like, what are these creets that you're talking about? I think that they should have maybe even on the asteroid, like shown them right up front, like their little red eyes, maybe behind a jail cell or on the spaceship or something. So I'm like, okay, now we've established these guys are in the movie. We can move past that and we'll get back to that later. Like that's a little nugget, little plant and payoff, if you will. But
sure.
I feel like they just assumed that I knew what the critters were. And so that when they showed up, I was going to be elated about it. And I just wish there would have been a little more of that. That would have been my only complaint about it. But other than that, the family stuff was great. Not complaining about that at all.
Yeah, no, I can totally appreciate that. Well, and so since we're on the matter of the critters, let's actually go ahead and dive in real quick to the critters themselves.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure you saw that the special effects of the critters were done by the infamous Chiodo brothers.
Absolutely. I was surprised to find that out. I had no idea.
I did not know that either. And so for everybody who is listening that doesn't know, they would be most famous for doing Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which they wrote, produced, directed, and did all of the special effects for. Yeah, at the time, exactly. They were special effects guys from back in the day. Also, funny thing, Ryan, actually, when I was doing my research, I looked it up. The Chiodo brothers are still working very actively. They're doing a lot of stop motion animation these days, and their offices are literally less than 10 miles away from my house in the San Fernando Valley, like in the city of San Fernando.
Oh, so wow.
There's some Valley guys there themselves.
Dude, go poke in and say hi.
I was thinking about it.
Get us some fucking bonus content, you bastard.
I was thinking about it, man. Go down there. Hey, you guys need some free labor? Teach me how to make some cool killer clown shit? Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Go down.
Yeah.
So these the special effects were done by the Chiodo brothers, who at the time I'm sure commanded far less than what they would be asking for today. I can imagine. As I mentioned earlier, the full articulation puppets, which were the ones that can move and can do all the snarling, and you can move their hands and legs to a limited degree. Those cost about $10,000 each to make, so they really only were able to make a few of those. Which I'm sure inflation probably double that, right? Because it's 1986.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to see how they were puppeteered, because you had a few different puppeteers, and what they would try to do is they would sort of set up these little tracks, if you will. So for example, in the barn, what they would do is they would have the area that the critter was going to be on. They would slice a line through the middle of the wood, and then they would sort of have a little bar going from the bottom of the critter to the mechanism underneath. And then they would have the puppeteers like literally moving them physically underneath, and then would cover all the top with hay so that you couldn't really see. And then they would obviously position the camera a unique way. So really old school puppeteer effects, like I'm sure they were doing with, Muppets and stuff like that back in the day. I mean, you're a big puppet fan. Like I'm sure you're very familiar with a lot of, sort of puppeteering and what goes into all that.
I've actually worked on some really cool puppet features and got to see it firsthand. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. From ex-Muppeteers that have gone on to go do other side projects and stuff, but worked in Jim Henson Studios. And I've run sound on all of that. And that's a whole thing on how to run sound for puppeteers, because they're looking down all the time at monitors to see where they are in relation to the other characters on screen. Yeah, it's a whole thing that you wouldn't think about. But then when you actually get on set and you see how it's done, it's pretty impressive and very, very interesting.
Absolutely. And those guys wreck their bodies, man. Like they're always being asked to contort themselves into these tiny spaces and move while they're crouched with their arms behind their back. Like, cramped up in such a way. Like it's crazy.
And they're doing the voices at the same time.
Yeah, right.
So, obviously some of it gets redone in ADR, but a lot of it is recorded there on set because they're interacting with the talent. So, they're asked to be in character and do these silly voices while their neck is cranked down, looking at a monitor. Even if you just touch your chin to your chest now, it's going to change the voice inflection in so much as it's cutting off your air supply to your voice and all of that. So, and then you mic them on their forehead and all of that in very much a theater or stage way. It's all a very interesting process, but this is, like you said, more of a Phil Tippett style, or, with the wires and all of that, like what you would, think of, creature from Star Wars, or even, where you're creating you have someone doing the facial features, somebody doing the actual movement of the puppet, maybe someone moving the hands. and all of that. So yeah, I would imagine it would probably be a 2 or 3 person process per critter. And you've got multiple of them on screen.
They had 2.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then they would also have like the non-articulated puppets. And those would be sort of like just traditional puppets where someone would have their hand up there and kind of move them around and open their mouths and such. So those would be like the background
Probably
ones.
for the close-ups of their faces and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Or some like the ones that, the one that's behind on the stairs in the background while the other one's getting flamed up in the front, right? Something like that.
Makes total sense. Yep.
Yeah. Now, one of the most interesting aspects of the decisions that the Kyoto brothers made making these critters, right? Because they had sketches and they had to bring them to life. And at first, the legs were kind of like hands and they were much larger. So it went through a few different iterations. But one of the things that they were very big on is they didn't want the critters to look like they felt soft and fuzzy, right?
Okay.
They didn't want them to be like gerbils or something like that.
Yeah, they got to be menacing.
They wanted them. Yeah, exactly. So they wanted them to have like more gamey fur, for lack of a better word, right? Something like a raccoon, something thick, right? So they ended up actually buying a bunch of moose pelts. So they worked out a deal for however many moose pelts, and they bought them all at once in bulk, right? So that they could get a great deal. And that's what they worked with. Well, it turns out that while it looked great on film and it did give that very coarse look, because it was so coarse and so thick, it was incredibly hard for them to work with. So everything from cutting the pelts and designing them to be able to mold around this little critter, right? Because you got to think it's a fabric like anything else. So, if you just take a roll of polyester or cotton or whatever base material, that wraps around a rounded object, no problem. Now you have to do the same thing with this super thick moose hair that wants to fight you and wants to be thick and rigid. So in terms of the application, it was very difficult. And then on top of that, it unfortunately made the puppeteer's job that much harder because, again, the fur was so thick that it was fighting what they wanted to do. So they would want to, like, for example, either open or close their mouth, and that would go against like the natural positioning of the fur, and the fur was so thick that it would like kind of want to snap their hand back. So it was like taking even more of their strength. As we talked about, even doing that for 10 minutes, your hand is going to just be destroyed. So
sure,
it really was a much larger strain on the puppeteers themselves. And then it just behaved in weird ways, so like it would look good with the mouth closed, but then they'd open it up and the hair would kind of like flare out to the side in some weird way. And so they'd have to constantly be snipping it and cutting it to make it do it and look exactly the way they wanted. So the end result was fascinating and looked really good, but they were all like, dude, it's such a pain in the ass. Like it would not have been worth it. And I believe for the future critter movies, they did not use moose pelts. I don't know what they used, but it wasn't moose.
Figured out. Yeah. No, I mean, Kyoto Brothers are legendary. I wonder, did they continue on with the Critters franchise? I did not look that up. I forgot to look that up.
Yeah, so I think so they remained on as like special effects consultants.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because
I know their careers took off shortly after this.
Correct. Yeah. So honestly, I'm sure their company handled it and they themselves specifically did not. That's what I would guess, right? We got people for that now.
Yeah, right. For the listeners that aren't familiar, the Kyoto Brothers went on to go do such legendary effects as Large Marge from Pee-wee's Big Adventure, all the puppeteering and stuff for puppeteering design for Team America World Police, and even the North Pole scene for the movie Elf for Jon Favreau. So yeah, these guys have definitely made their mark in Hollywood for the kind of stuff that they do.
Absolutely. And the one last interesting thing I'd like to mention about the way that they approach the critters is that there's a specific way that their eyes look, and that obviously, like everything else, has a specific reason behind it. So they always kind of felt like just throwing some LEDs behind some piece of plastic, like you could kind of tell that's what was going on, right? It didn't really look 100% real. And they were looking for it to be a little bit more dramatic in the way that it appeared on film. And so they had this idea that ended up working really well. And what they did is they built the eyes. And then when they were done making the eyes, there was really no lights behind them. And what they did is they blasted the front with this spray that's a reflecting spray that, as a matter of fact, is the same spray that they sell and advertise for you to spray on your license plate so that red light cameras can't take a picture of your car. Have you ever seen that product?
Yes. Carry on.
And so what it does is it just reflects all the light back so that it basically blows out the picture so that it can't be read what your actual license plate is because it's got this highly reflective coating on it. And so what they did is that they applied that coating to the eyes of the critters, and then they took like a little laser light pen and they put a splitter on it so that it would split into two, and then blasted that at the eyes. And so what you're seeing is this highly reflective coating reflecting the red laser light back at the camera. And that's why it looks the way it
awesome.
is.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I did a similar thing when I was a kid. My very first vehicle was a lowrider mini truck, and I had given it it was a 5-speed manual transmission, and I given the stick shift a skull shift head, gear head, and for lack of a better term,
as you do, it's either a skull or an 8-ball. Yes,
right. Yes, correct. I went with the skull. When given such two decisions, I chose the skull. So, but I ran cables up the shifter boot into the skull itself and into the eyes. I drilled out little holes and I put red diodes in the eyes, and I used that reflective substance you're talking about on the inside of the eye sockets in a very similar way so that it made the eyes glow instead of just having two diodes there. Guys,
look at that.
I was an idiot kid. I apologize for this story. I just felt like I
But
would
you were also
share.
very smart. You also were apparently a special effects whiz, and you didn't even know it.
I was a visual effects, special effects guy, even at the young age of 16 years old, driving around my lowrider, listening to Biggie and Tupac. Absolutely. And Outkast.
Fantastic. Well, hey, I'll tell you what, before we continue, we're going to take a quick break to hear from this week's sponsor. Please enjoy this message. We'll be right back.
Dude, is the camera on? I can't see the red light.
Yeah, we're live.
Bullshit, man. There's no... Oh, there it is.
Still streaming, Drex.
Shut up, Steve. Some brother-in-law you are. What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Drexler out here with another episode of Crunners, the best creature hunting show on YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe, and of course...
We're still doing Crunters?
Yes, we're still doing Crunters, Steve. It's called a mashup. Creatures meets hunters. Crunters.
I'm telling you, it sounds horrible.
You sound horrible, Steve. Like I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, be sure to smash that subscribe button if you haven't yet. And to the 37 beautiful people that have, Sexy Drexy loves you for it.
You gotta be kidding me.
We're here outside of Old Man Brown's farm, where I've been hearing rumors about some furry creatures that like to munch up on humans for supper. Come on, y'all. Let's see what we can find. Want to take this moment to shout out my sponsor, Sousa's Shotguns, who provided me with this little beauty we see right here today. And if you like hearing me cock this fine-ass weapon, y'all, be sure to like and subscribe for more banging-ass content. Ba-boom, chunk nuggets!
Whoa, come on, Drex, you're gonna shoot someone. We're trespassing, you're gonna get us caught, idiot.
And don't forget, trouble with the landlord. Don't sue, call Susie. Sousa's Shotguns. Use code SEXYDREXY for an extra 10% off your order today. Oh, shit. Hey, Steve. Hey, Steve, you hearing this, man?
Yeah, it sounds like two people making out.
Oh, shit. We're gonna get a free porno out of this. Woohoo!
This feels wrong.
By the way, if anyone watching likes impromptu pornography, make sure to smash that subscribe button. Okay, now, y'all, listen. I'm looking at these two young people. They look like they're maybe older teenagers. Girl's super hot. Hey, I'm not gonna lie, y'all, so is the guy, kinda. Matter of fact, I think... Holy shit, is that Billy Zane?
There's no way that's Billy Zane.
That is goddamn Billy Zane. Hey, Billy Zane, we love you, buddy. And we all agree, the Phantom was tragically underappreciated.
Shh, Drex, keep it quiet. You're gonna blow our...
Whoa, what the hell is that?
It's a giant furry monster. The legends were true.
Drex, what's he doing?
He's trying to eat Billy Zane.
Ah, my Billy Zane face.
Billy Zane, no!
Drex, now where are you going?
I gotta save Billy! Listen up, you giant furry asshole! Billy Zane is a goddamn national treasure! And I won't let you take him from us!
Please, forget the girl. Save me instead.
Billy, I just had an idea.
What's that?
There's enough room on that horse for one of us.
What are you saying?
Don't fight me on this, Billy Zane. You just take that horse and you ride it to freedom.
Oh, really? Awesome. No, I legitimately couldn't hear you just now. This is wonderful news. Thanks for the sacrifice, pal. Billy Zane out. Yeah!
Damn. Billy Zane just left me to die.
Well, that's Hollywood for you.
Either way, YouTube, just be sure to make sweet, sweet love to that subscribe button. For Crunters, this is your boy Drexler saying...
I still think Grunters is a dumb name.
And that was this week's message from this week's sponsor. Very handsomely rewarded us, so please do go out and enjoy their fine offerings, whatever they may have just been. Now, from here, we've got the bounty hunters, and they find the dead cop. And this is actually, I thought this was a very funny sort of little touch that they probably didn't play up as well as they could. Like, they didn't really give it comedic beats, but I thought it was very funny to have the second shape-shifting alien, like, fashion himself and copy the dead cop and then end up being dead himself or looking dead because he copied a dead cop. And I feel like they definitely left some laughs on the table by not exploring that a little bit more. Did you feel that way at all, or was that just me?
I kind of felt that way throughout the film. I think that it wanted to be... So if you're going to lean into the zaniness, again, referencing Dead Alive, great example, or Gremlins for that matter, or even better yet, Gremlins 2. Then you kind of need to like go that way and have a little more of the laughs involved. I felt like the tone was zany that way, and it was done very well. I'm not judging the tone at all, the way that people responded to these things or like kind of the schlockiness, but I think it was missing some of the jokes or some of the punchlines that
I agree. I
could have really helped bolster the whole thing and filled it out more. And now that I'm thinking about it, because it does have the family stuff, it does have kind of the schlocky stuff. These are all the things that Gremlins had. I think that maybe a little bit of the plant and payoff, like I discussed, and a little bit of the humor injected as well, really would have made this, that would have leveled this thing up a whole grade rating for me personally. Because it was right there. But again, first time director, first time writer, a lot of first time talent here on the cast and stuff, especially lower budget. Yep. So, but Dead Alive was a lower budget, but I just think that, seeing your work on screen and seeing what works and what doesn't. You and I were just having this discussion earlier today about our sketches and how, for better or worse, we've, put more into them, looking back on our earlier work, we were learning a lot from them. And, so, and now, we're able to, they don't, maybe not all land, but they're at least, more filled out. We know, we have a little more, foundation to bring to the table. And I think that's, because Stephen Herrick went right from this again to go make Bill and Ted's, and that does have a lot of the humor, and those jokes do land. And so, I think.
Well, and I think that's more reflective of the script than anything else. And that's kind of one of the things that I actually wanted to mention is that I actually don't feel like this movie is very zany. I feel like that's kind of what differentiates it from Gremlins. I feel like this movie has a lot more of that poltergeist, kind of Steven Spielberg family. We're not going to get too dark with the horror. Like I said, I think the fairest comparison is Poltergeist, from the tone to the lack of graphic violence to the family banding together element. And I think that kind of exists very much in contrast to like Gremlins, which is really the Joe Dante show. Like that's the thing to remember. Like Joe Dante is a specific kind of crazy. Peter Jackson is a specific kind of crazy, right? So, and also we're comparing this film. Both of those films are inarguably in my top 25 of all time, arguably in my top 10 of all time. So we are comparing this film, Critters, to what I would consider some of the best films of all time.
Sure.
So I'm not saying it exists in that stratosphere at all. It's definitely a next tier down. But again, that doesn't make it a bad film just because it's not one of the best ever. It's good at what it does. It's solid. But to your point, yes, there are things that were left on the table, like we just talked about. And there
I'm
was
gonna
probably
disagree,
2 or 3
man.
laugh out loud moments, I'll say.
You got,
I thought I could
because you
use
got
a lot
the
more.
critters on the front porch and the one,
Yeah,
because here's the thing where they did that was zany. And I'm going to argue your point with this and state that when they gave the critters subtitles, I thought that was a fantastic
that was where
decision.
they kind of lent
and
into
yet
that.
they should have been more, because now you have a way for the critters to talk directly to your audience without anybody else knowing. Like that's a wink and a nod to the viewer, right? And I love that. It's almost like breaking the fourth wall.
Moment.
Yeah. So you've got the 2 critters on the front porch, and the one critter says they've got guns. The other critter says, so what? That critter gets shot immediately by a double-barrel shotgun, gets blown to smithereens, and the first critter says, oh, fuck. It's hilarious in the moment.
It is very funny. And yeah, so let me tell you a little bit about that one. We'll jump up real quick, then we'll jump back and we'll keep it going. But because this is just a little ahead of where we are. But so the interesting thing about that is that the producer, Bob Shea, who ended up having final say, was very adamant that the aliens should not talk in English whatsoever. They had actually considered having the critters outright talk English at certain times. And they ended up deciding not to do that. Bob Shea brought in a vocal artist to do the little like type of stuff that they do, you know? And so it was time for the first screening of the film, okay? And the director and the writer were like, man, those fucking subtitles, like they need to be in there. Like Bob's killing us on this moment. He doesn't know what he's leaving on the table, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they talked to one of the editors who was working on the film and convinced him to basically take money out of the editing petty cash account that they had. And then they ran the reel over to like some janky special effects house and were just like, okay, we have enough money for this one exchange. Okay, so in this scene on the porch, here's all the money. We want you to do these subtitles. They have weapons, so what? Fuck, right? And that was the only scene in the first print that had subtitles. And they had basically went rogue around Bob Shea's back and had that put in. And then when it played in the screening, that moment slayed. Like they said you could not hear dialogue for 2 minutes after that little exchange. Everybody was just rolling on the floor laughing. After which, of course, after the movie, Bob runs out to Steven and Dominic. First thing, we've got to get more subtitles. What can we do to have them talk more? Because that's how it goes every single time with creatives and non-creatives.
Fantastic.
So that was
it worked for me. Did it work for you?
Absolutely. It's the funniest moment in the entire film. And to your point, I would have liked to have seen a lot more of that. And speaking of ways in which the film differed from the way it was originally envisioned or shot, so right before that, we've got this scene of April and Steve, and they're macking in the barn, right? And this is where we get our first on-screen death. And it's of Steve, played by Billy Zane, because, of course, you know, sister's boyfriend is going to be the first one to die. That just makes sense. The original death was super gory, even after they had realized it was PG-13. And that was kind of one of the funny things. So I want to say it was Steven Chiodo, kind of the ringleader of the three of them. This scene, they asked them to make a giant chest cavity for Billy Zane and had the creature literally like eating his chest open with like all of this gore and viscera exposed. And they've got a bunch of like squibs and tubes that are pumping out blood. And like Chiodo's just rolling his eyes. And at one point he goes, they were apparently filming this scene for like 3 hours. And he just goes, guys, do you know that we got PG-13? He's like, you're not going to be able to use a second of any of this. Why are we still filming? And like walks away. And sure enough, the only part that you saw in the final cut of that entire like several hours of shooting and all the crazy shit they did is that brief little close up of a bloody faced Billy Zane for like half a second.
Yeah, it was a little lackluster. I would have liked to have seen more of that.
But the DVD has behind the scenes footage. And let me tell you, they crushed it. And it would have been awesome if that made it to the film.
Nice. So this footage does still exist out there.
Yeah, absolutely. If you get the Blu-ray, Scream Factory did an awesome Blu-ray that I watched for this, and it has a bunch of cool special features. And one of them is all the behind-the-scenes
got
test
Blu-ray money
of the critters. I invest in the show, Ryan. Okay, that's how much I believe in this program. I invest in it. I could spend $4 on
the host
stream,
of the show,
but
kicking down that sweet,
I wouldn't have all
Blu-ray
these
money.
awesome stories to share with you.
Yeah.
But yes, so and then we also get right after that is where the son sort of chucks a firecracker at the one guy who like eats it, and then it smokes up, and then he explodes. By guy, of course, I'm referring to Critter, because yes, we gender them. So, but it's kind of one of those things where it's just like, a lot of this stuff is just cool. Like, that's kind of what I want to see in a movie called Critters, is a critter eating a firework and having it smoke up, and then it explodes and he explodes with it. Like, that's awesome. That's what we're here for.
Yep. Like the baby in the blender and Dead Alive, like any number of scenes from Gremlins, everything we're talking about. Yes. I even would go on a limb and say that Killer Clowns from Outer Space had more scenes like that. There are low budget films that you don't need a big budget to lean into what you are. There are a lot of films on this scale that know what they are, have a low budget, and just lean into the schlock and the humor and all of that. I mean, even Child's Play did a lot of that, going back to that. So, I don't know. I will say the April character got over Steve very quickly, because moving past this scene, you never hear his name mentioned. She never really weeps over him. Like, it's just like, fuck it. That guy's gone.
Well,
whatever.
Hey, I mean, she can't get the D anymore, so what good is it? Nothing to nobody.
I guess this is when the film stopped being zany, huh?
Well, I don't know, because from there we've got the scene where the bounty hunters go to church,
Zany,
and then the guy who was the dead cop now decides,
because Billy Zane.
I didn't hear. I missed the joke.
Because it's
zany
Billy
Zane.
Zane
I get it. I like jokes. I stay up on jokes very strongly. I always get them right away.
I do this for the listeners. You're welcome.
Oh, Jesus. Ryan will never stop pretending that he is in his own personal episode of The Muppet Show. Just in his head, constantly like, waka, waka, waka. Guys.
That's right. I mean, I'm talking to you right now in my banana telephone across, holding it up to my ear. Carry on.
So he copies the pastor's. So now he's reflecting the pastor's face instead of the dead cop. Back home, we've got the family. They're trapped inside the house. Power gets cut, not just to the house, but to the truck as well. They were trying to get out of there, and lo and behold, the truck's power is all cut. They can't leave, which leads to Dad having a shotgun fight with the critters. That's when he gets bitten inside the house. So again, for people keeping score, we've got Dad getting bit twice. Everyone else has managed to, I believe, avoid getting bitten yet. And from there, we've got another scene that was funny, probably only for me and possibly other diehard fans of The Simpsons. I don't know if you had the same thought about this, but the scene where the bounty hunters go to the bowling alley and then just shoot it up with all of their weapons reminds me of Homer's brilliant idea of how he's going to bring more money to the bowling alley so that he can remain a pin monkey, which is to run outside and blast a shotgun in the air. You're like, bowling, bowling, get your bowling, everyone.
I totally forgot about that. No, that did not land with me, but now that you bring it up, flawless.
That was like all I thought. But I mean, like 85% of anything that happens in a movie reminds me of The Simpsons. So, but I know there's one other person out there listening who probably thought the same thing. If so, please chime in one of our accounts. Let me know.
I will say that the bowling team or bowling league, their uniforms, even though they were a total homage to Ghostbusters, every time I see bowling uniforms ever, I always think of The Simpsons. That does harken back to that. They're
the Pin Pals, absolutely.
Yes.
And it was a very similar design. It just had the ghost on the head of the pin.
Correct.
Instead of the heads of the bowlers.
Yep. I immediately, my mind goes to Simpsons Bowling League every time, the Pin Pals. So, yeah, that was fantastic.
Fantastic. Now, the guns themselves as well were an original creation. So, part of it is because of the way that they were designed and the way that they wanted to have them designed, they couldn't be reloaded easily. And they couldn't be reloaded in between takes. So, the most they could get with a traditional shotgun would be 2 blasts. They wanted to get the directors and everyone else, the filmmakers, wanted to be able to get 4 blasts per take so that they could increase their efficiency, basically. So they had this guy come in and basically build these entirely new sort of modified shotguns that could get 4 blasts. They also needed to be able to like swivel and articulate on the belt for the actors so that it didn't carry awkwardly.
Yeah, it makes
so
sense. Didn't impede their movement and them projecting and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So they ended up having those custom made, and it was pretty cool to see the prop master, how he ended up putting those together. And there's a funny story about firing the weapon that we'll get to here in just a minute. I'll refer back to this moment. But in terms of the film, we've got the family still trapped in the house. The critters end up breaking through the window, and that's where we also get them shooting the spike in Mom's neck. So she's starting to feel a little woozy. We've got the son who grabs the shotgun, and he's going to be the hero. He ends up firing and missing horribly, hits the fan. Fan ends up dropping down almost on him, and he runs upstairs. That's when he sees another critter. This time has the idea, hey, let's not shoot it. Let's burn this one to the ground with this lamp here. So throws the lamp on the ground. Critter ends up going ablaze. They're able to tamp it out before, too much damage is done. And then as they're powwowing in the bedroom, Dad's in bad shape and they've got to get out of here. So the son, Brad, ends up convincing the family, but ultimately Dad, to let him try to go save the day. He's going to run out, grab his bike, speed away. And except that when he gets out there, there is a critter guarding the bike. And this would be one of like the medium-sized critters. They basically designed 3 different critters over the course of the movie. There's a small, medium, and large critter. And this is also where we get like a very sort of cool practical effect where we see the shadow of the critter actually growing from the small critter to the large critter. So now we know without seeing it that there's this sort of like large critter that's out there. And obviously that's going to be the big crescendo, as it's going to lead up to that at the climax. In the meantime, the small ones, in a sort of a very funny little note, they ended up, they're in the bedroom. This is where they're like basically tearing up the whole bedroom. They've got all the pillows flying everywhere with the down feathers. And then they have the one that's basically like talking to the ET doll. And it's like, hey, you, where are you from? Hey, we're aliens. Where are you from? And then it ends up attacking him. Nice little, touch there, reference to the times, of course.
Well, especially since Dee Wallace was in E.T. as the mom, so.
Yeah, exactly. And this is actually the moment I was referring to a moment ago with the guns. So basically after that all happens, the kid actually manages to get his bike. He runs out and he finds the bounty hunters. He thinks they're cops, which is why he stops them, and he jumps in, very quickly finds out that they're not cops. They're these bounty hunters, and convinces them to take him home. And we're introduced to them by way of this like giant explosion where they just apparently blast their way into the house. And what I would have to imagine was kind of unnecessary because everybody else was upstairs, as were all the critters. So they like blow up the front porch or whatever. And then they end up walking upstairs. There's a couple critters up there. And if you remember, there's the one that ends up like rolling over to the toilet and like trying to hide in the toilet.
Yes.
And then there's the scene where the rocker guy, bounty hunter, comes up and like blasts the shotgun at the toilet. And
Johnny Steele, we shall call him by name, Johnny Steele.
Of course, Johnny Steele, power of the night.
Power of the night, baby.
So Johnny. So the funny thing is the actor himself, I forget his name, but the actual actor that played Johnny Steele.
Terrence Mann.
Really wanted to do, Terrence Mann, thank you. Really wanted to do the effects. Or actually like shoot the gun on this shot, even though there was no close up, right? He just like really, really wanted to fire the gun. And it was one of these things where it wasn't like a live bullet. It was set up to where you get the shotgun explosion from the gun with no live bullet. And then they had an explosive attached to the toilet that they rigged to go off at the same time that explodes to simulate it, right? And they were just like, no, Terrence, it's too dangerous. He's like, nah, fuck that. It's fine. Just let me do it. They're like, no, go away. They like wouldn't relent. So he like, shoulders hunched, like, oh, fine, kicks rocks away. So then it comes time, the stuntman comes in. They do that shot, and the shrapnel was so severe that it completely tore up the stuntman's face.
Oh, wow.
And had they done that, had they let him do that shot, he wouldn't have been able to shoot the rest of his scenes. So it's kind of funny
any
that
scenes
they, like, stuck
ever
to his guns.
anymore.
Yeah, right? He ain't pretty no more.
Right.
Yeah, so kind of a funny little story there. From there, we've got, like I said, this giant critter. So most of the critters at this point have been destroyed. If we recall, I don't even really know that we mentioned it at the top, but basically the bounty hunters have been assigned by that worm warden guy at the beginning to go and kill all 8 critters, right? And then basically bring back evidence that they did indeed kill all 8 of them. So at this point, we're down to 3 critters. We've got 2 of the small ones, but we've got this one large one. And the large one grabs the daughter and goes away. The son sort of rides off on his bike to chase. He finds Charlie, and the 2 of them soon find the actual spaceship that the Krites had crashed down. Now, the son sneaks in and rescues the sister and drops a firecracker in there, after which point our man Charlie ends up using a liquor bottle. Again, he's the town drunk, right? He uses one of his liquor bottles to make this like makeshift Molotov cocktail.
Yes.
And he chucks that in the spaceship. That was cool. Which that lights on fire, but not enough to actually destroy the ship yet, because it's going to take that first firecracker that Brad left really exploding, and all of that is going to end up destroying the ship. So as the ship is flying away, it's able to take one last look at the house, and it fires this laser at the house and destroys it in a very big, giant fashion. And the funny thing about this, Ryan, is that they actually used a form of napalm to make that explosion because they wanted to get that sort of green color that comes from it. And apparently it was such a huge explosion that not only did the actors who were like on a hill hundreds of feet away get a bunch of shrapnel in their face, but there was a bunch of reports that like cars were like pulling over on the freeway and stopping to see, like they were assuming there was some sort of nuclear attack or something like that going on.
So did they blow up an actual house? I assume they did this as a miniature like they did in Poltergeist.
So I didn't actually mention this earlier, but so the interesting thing about this is actually basically kind of like a model home.
Okay.
This was in an area, it was shot in an area of Valencia, and it hadn't been developed yet. And they were in the middle of doing all the development, and they basically had like a model home, which was perfect because that's basically what they need, right? So because it was like half of a home in reality, it was very easy for them to get in and like cut stuff away to, you know, have one of the producers grab a critter on his hand and stick it through the staircase, right? Because it was just all hollow.
Oh,
underneath.
awesome.
Yeah. So it was almost kind of set up like a set to begin with, just with some modifications.
Sure.
And so they ended up blowing that up. So they ended up blowing that up for this scene.
Got it.
So yeah, so it was like a house, but like not a full house, but like more than a set, somewhere in between all that.
Very impressive. Like I said, I could have swore that would have been done with miniatures instead of just blow. Because that's just, yeah, that's a whole new level of liability.
No, absolutely. Yeah, that is definitely like mid-'80s, we don't know better. Regulations haven't been quite put in place to prevent this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, you could never get away with that.
Blow
today.
that shit up. I support it. I will say that at this point in the film, as we're winding it down here, it did kind of occur to me that aside from some added color into the script, the Charlie character really does kind of only exist for this moment, right? Like that is the whole plant and payoff of him throwing his liquor bottle up there along with the firecracker or whatever, you know. But outside of that, like he has no real impact on anything other than just showing up as some pseudo comic relief.
Well, he's also
really funny.
I mean, he's also supposed to be that kind of like the harbinger, the crazy guy that doesn't end up being crazy because
there
it's
is a little bit of
film.
that. My feelings, yeah, he always talks about his feelings and they're coming and all.
He's
of
talking
this,
about
right.
he's getting transmissions and all that. Yeah,
sure.
So yeah, but he's definitely that character. But yeah, it totally sets that up. And then as the Krites are flying away, that's when the firecracker goes off. That in turn blows up the actual spaceship, which kills the 3 remaining critters. And so with their job done, the bounty hunters are able to leave. But before they do, they end up giving a transmitter. Johnny Steele gives a transmitter from his belt and leaves it with the kid Brad. And this is actually going to set up a nice scene the next morning. But before we go into the next scene, Ryan, I did want to let you know, were you familiar that this film had an alternate ending originally?
I did not know that.
Yeah, so again, one of the special features on my Mr. Monopoly Man Blu-ray is the original ending.
Right, your gold-plated Blu-ray.
And it actually ends right there. So the original ending was kind of a downbeat ending where the family stays together, but they lose their house. It blows up and they all just drive away in Harv, the policeman's vehicle, and the film ends. Well, but not without like our little reveal of the 3 little eggs as well. There is the 3 little eggs as well, but they're all there on the destroyed property.
Got it.
Now, this was actually the ending that screened when they first had that first screening where I was talking about earlier with the superimpositions that they roguely went out and had done. And people were like, you know what? Good ending. Could have used a little work. I feel like, the upbeat nature of the film, etc. It really should go out on a positive note. And they still had the Johnny Steele bounty hunter give the kid that transmitter. Just he didn't do anything with it.
Sure.
It was just kind of a token of appreciation or something.
Yeah. Call us
and
if
so
you ever
someone
need
had
us,
the
kid.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so someone gave Bob the idea, like, well, what if that little transmitter actually like triggers something to rebuild the house? And they were like, perfect.
Done.
So this, to your
Solves
point,
that.
Ryan, is they're going back. Now, this is where they use miniatures. So at this point, so funny thing, right? You would think that they would just do all of that footage in reverse, right? But they didn't have that wasn't in the plans because that wasn't the original ending. So they never, so they couldn't do that. So, because it wasn't filmed that way. So what they did is they ended up having a miniature built and then had it take place the next day and then had the family come back. So what they did is they blew up a miniature, but they knew that they were going to need the house to rebuild itself. They already had the explosion, right?
Got it.
So
got it.
So
they got the camera angles they needed to do
original,
that, and then they were able to play it in reverse.
Correct. Except that because it was a miniature, the whole thing was made of wood, and they knew that they weren't getting the explosion; they were getting it rebuilding itself.
Okay.
And so they wanted it to look more like it was rebuilding itself from a collapse than like a splintered explosion.
Sure, that makes sense.
So they built. Yeah, so they built the entire miniature house out of wood and then added a bunch of latex in and used latex to do a lot of the windows and the walls and over that so that when they exploded it wouldn't blow up into parts. It would just kind of blow into small parts like little shrapnel and splinters. It would sort of blow up into larger parts.
Got it. Okay.
And that way, when you reversed it, it would sort of look like it was assembling itself
like a puzzle almost.
From pieces on the ground more so than like an explosion in reverse.
From shrapnel. Yeah. No, that makes total sense. That's a brilliant way to do that. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because when you told me they blew up an actual house, that was the first thing I thought. I didn't want to I knew we still had a little bit to go on the narrative, so I didn't want to jump there. But my first thought was, then how did it come back together? And now that you just put that together for me, so I appreciate it.
There you go. Yeah. And the only thing that they had to do in terms of like making it normal size is there's that one shot of the family, the 4 of them. It's like an OTS where you see the roof kind of piecing itself back together. And there's a white picket fence in the foreground. So they basically just built a real scale size white picket fence for the actors to stand next to. And then, positioned the miniature house accordingly in the background so that it looked all huge and blown up.
Cool.
So yeah, and then that pretty much brought us to the end of the film where the spaceship flies away and the cop drives off and the family returns back to their house. But not before we get a slight little tracking shot that takes us all the way into a barn in the backyard. We see our 3 critter eggs sitting in a basket in some sort of nest, just waiting to rehatch for a sequel. And that's where we get our fade to black with our awesome 80s synth score that kicks in. Fantastic.
Loved it.
And that's Critters. Absolutely. So definitely a fun film. And, it's not going to be definitely, as we mentioned earlier, very different flavor than Phantom Thread or some of the other films, Sweet Smell, that we've looked here, Amadeus, these films. But, this is why we have this program, because we like to look at the high and low in equal measure. And even the low in this case is still pretty damn good, I got to say.
I mean, we created the list, so we have only ourselves to blame.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Ryan, as we do when we wrap things up, we are going to get ahead and I'm going to ask you for your 3 adjectives that describe your experience with the film Critters.
These are pretty easy. Stuff I've already kind of covered earlier on. My first is value meal, because I just kind of wanted more. I felt like everything... This is junk food, right? This is the trip to the late night trip to Taco Bell where you're getting that good stuff that I mean, it's not quality. It's not it's not Phantom Thread or, Amadeus, like you said. But I just wanted a little more. I felt like it was the value meal version of the fast food. Like I just got 2 tacos and a drink. I wanted a little more critters. I wanted a little more foreshadowing. I wanted a little more comedy. But everything that was there was fucking perfect, and I loved every minute of it. So much so I loved it so much that I wanted more of it. So I mean that in a good way. The second is nostalgia, for all the reasons we talked about, from the opening New Line logo to all the schlocky stuff to young Billy Zane and the 80s power ballads and the tall hair and all of it. This was nostalgia overload to 1986. And I loved every minute of it. Creature feature, because that's what this is. This is kind of a little bit of sci-fi, a little bit of horror, but we're here for the creatures. We're here for the violence. We're here for the comedy and the silliness and the over-the-top behaviors. And so as much as I did love the family stuff in the beginning and all of that dynamic that led into the creatures, this was a creature feature to me. Jason, how about you, buddy?
Absolutely. So my first one I've got is very simply fun. It's just a fun movie, right? Is it the most fun I've ever had at the movies? No. Can you get very much more amped up versions of this out there? Yes. But that's not to take away from the fact that this is just a solid film. It's enjoyable. It's not something, it's PG-13, first of all. So it's something where if you're a parent, you can actually watch it with your kid, which, I mean, how many horror films can you actually watch with your kid? The most offensive thing is an F-bomb and a little bit of blood here and there. So let's also not overlook the fact that, like, it's a family horror film, which, again, single digits probably of films that would qualify for that. And even if you're not, it's not something where, again, you need to get super dark with it. You can just have a good time, crack open a beer, do whatever you want, and enjoy it. The other, I've got a hyphenated one for you here. Surprisingly competent. And that's kind of the biggest takeaway that I had from this film is, like, all of the ingredients were actually really well done.
Really well done. Normally,
a low budget horror film is not shot well. It looks like garbage. This was not the case. This film actually looked very solid.
Agreed.
The creature effects themselves were not lackluster. Could they have been a little beefed up? Sure. But I've certainly seen a lot worse. And they were still willing to show you everything, which I've always got to give it credit for that. Yep. Awesome score, well acted, well paced, well everything, So again, for a low budget B-grade horror movie, surprisingly competent. And lastly,
and from a first-time director.
AF, man.
Let's not shine that on. I mean, these
absolutely.
Guys are brand new to the game. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
First-time writer, too.
Yeah, right.
No, absolutely. First-time writer. No, absolutely. So, but yeah, and then third, like I said, 80s AF, just all across the board, dude. This was 1986, from the hair of Johnny Steele to the synth-driven score of the main theme to the very sort of family-oriented score from David Newman, to the acting styles, to the decisions, just everything about this screams the 1980s.
Yes.
Which, to your point, nostalgia, I feel like that's just two different ways of saying the same thing.
This is peak 80s.
So, yeah, absolutely. So fun, surprisingly competent, 80s AF. I'm going to go ahead and give you my star rating first, and I am giving this one a solid 4 out of 5 stars.
Oh, nice.
Solid movie. Yeah. Could have gone a little bit less maybe just for some technical things, but I was like, no, you know what? I enjoy it. Solid film. I would watch it again. It's not something I'm going to make a yearly viewing,
Agreed.
Right? But definitely going to be watching the film again at some point down the road, and I would gladly throw it on for someone that hasn't seen it. So solid 4 out of 5 stars from old Jason. What you got on grade rating?
I'm giving it a C+ for all the same reasons. It might be a little bit lower than yours, and maybe I did the discount that you're talking about that you could have, because I could have easily gone a B-. I was right on the fence. Like, is it a B- film or a C+ film? And I just kind of had to lean more towards the C+, for all the reasons I mentioned. But this is a great film. Like, I mean, it's not the best film. It's not the best version of this. It's definitely above average. And I had a great time.
Yeah.
So
100%.
Yeah. C+.
And speaking of ratings, we really need your guys' help with the ratings out there. We do not have that many on the old iTunes. I know Spotify has a rating system. So once again, going to ask you guys to please help us out. If you could rate us, we're not even going to ask you to rate us 5 stars. If you think we're a 5-star show, rate it. But if you think we're a 3 or 4 star or 1 star, rate it accordingly. Okay. We just want to get those numbers up a little bit. If you notice they're lacking, hopefully you're already subscribed, leaving reviews, all of that good stuff. And then the other thing I want to mention is we still have the Esoterica Cinema hotline. right? So you can still call in and let us know what you think about Critters, what you thought about our review of Phantom Thread a couple weeks back, what you think about the films that we have on our master list. Maybe you'd like to recommend some films that you think should be on our list. All of this, you can call in. We'll get your clip live on the air here for everyone to listen to. That number, Esoterica Cinema Hotline, 818-483-6285. Please call us. Leave us a message. We would love to hear from you. And of course, if you don't prefer calling in, maybe you're shy about your voice or something like that, which, by the way, I have a show. So if you're, at all hesitant about your voice being on the air, if I can do it, anybody can. So please just call us. Don't worry about it. And the other thing is that you can hit us up on the social medias, right? Esoterica Cinema at Twitter, at Instagram, and also at gmail.com, where you know that we love to hear about all of your muffin-related comments in addition to whatever else you got going on. So plenty of ways to go ahead and check us out. The other thing is, if you haven't seen the website is looking beautiful these days. We've got a player with the last 4 episodes on there. You can listen to all the episodes right there. And of course, one of my favorite things is that it has access to our master list of films, where it has all 200 films that could potentially get drawn for the following episode. And right now, we're actually going to go ahead and take a look at that and get into it as we look at our next film for Esoterica Cinema. All right, Ryan, let's see what we got here, man. So, of course, the first thing I'm going to do is pull up my list, and the second thing I'm going to do is pull up my random.org true random number generator. Got 1 through 200. As we generate the list, we go to 187. So, again, if you're on the site right now or you've got that list printed out, you're going to go to number 187. And it looks like, wow, we have got quite the prestige picture here. Now, this could have gone a couple different ways, okay? First of all, it's the first time that we've been on the third page. Basically, the way this document works, it breaks down into 3 pages. So, 75 films roughly per page. This is the first film from the back 75. It starts at 144. Now, above it, we have a film called Time Crimes, which is a French horror thriller that has to do with time travel of some sort. And then we've also got, after it, 188, which is Tree of Life. Terrence Malick, Tree of Life, which 3-hour art film. I think that would lend itself to a pretty good discussion here. However, for our next episode, we are doing a film that is one of the most highly regarded films in cinematic history. I've never seen it. It's actually Paul Schrader's favorite film of all time. I just happened to be looking at one of his top 5 lists recently, and it's just so highly regarded. It's the film called Tokyo Story. And I can tell you right now for a fact, Tokyo Story is available on the Criterion Channel and my beloved Canopy, and I know there's other places that you can get it. Ryan, please give us a description for Tokyo Story.
From 1953, and director Yasujiro Ozu. Google has this described as: the elderly Shukishi and his wife Tomi take the long journey from their small seaside village to visit their adult children in Tokyo. Their elder son, Koichi, a doctor, and their daughter, Shigi, a hairdresser. I'm butchering all these names, by the way. I'm so sorry. Don't have much time to spend with their aged parents, so it falls to Noriko. Got that one. The widow of their younger son who was killed in the war to keep her in-laws company. Holy fuck, dude. Yeah, I almost needed subtitles for the description. My bad on that, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and edit the best I can. This is sitting at 100% Rotten Tomato meter, so don't let my description botching sway you on watching this film. This is something that I've wanted to see for a while. I've heard about it. I have never seen this film. So have you, Jason?
Me neither.
Yeah.
No, I have absolutely not. And honestly, I didn't even really know what it was about. I think I've mentioned before by now that I love to try to go into films blind. But again, this is one of those films that's on everybody's must-see films before you die. It's consistently spoken of in the same breath as films like Citizen Kane and The Third Man and all of these just wonderful classic historical films where it's just supposed to be among. Now here's the thing. That might kind of work against it, because now we've got all these built-up expectations. However, the same thing could have been said about Amadeus, and that was just as wonderful, and high expectations, I don't think, took that away from you, right?
Yeah, so I'm reading this description, and it's like, so an elderly couple go to visit their kids to keep them company.
Right.
Awesome. So
cool, bro.
Yeah. What I'm hoping this isn't is Wild Strawberries, which was a highly regarded film as well. And I watched it and I was like, wah, wah, total snoozer.
Yeah, neither of us like that one, dude.
Yeah. So let's hope.
But it could be like, but I mean, here's the thing: it could also just as easily be like live action Grave of the Fireflies from that description.
It could
so
totally be that too.
We'll have to see.
Yeah, it's 2 hours and 16 minutes, so it's right on the cusp of.
All
I think that's the
Not too
sweet
bad.
spot for me. Like right around 2 hours is where I want a film to be. So it's just over that. I mean, unless you're Critters and you want to do an hour and 20, then fuck yeah, let's do it. But yeah, Tokyo Story.
Unless they're your precious Marvel movies that want to take 2 hours and 75 minutes each time, which, yes, I know is 3 hours and 15 minutes. That's a joke. Please don't at me.
Whatever.
So anyways, that was Critters. Hopefully you watched and you enjoyed. If not, hopefully you enjoyed listening to us talk about it. If you want to get ahead of next episode's film, do go ahead and check out Tokyo Story. That'll be available at a number of places. And we will see you on the next episode of Esoterica Cinema. Thanks for hanging out.